Welcome back to the CSS Grid course. This is going to be part 3 of our kind of final project here. And if you haven't watched the first 2 parts of this, be sure to do so. There's a link in the description for my full stack roadmap playlist. And the CSS Grid course is kind of a subset of that. So hit that playlist in the description for all of these videos in the correct order, and we're ready to get started. So just as a reminder, here's what we're trying to create. Is this Holy Grail CSS layout, and it's responsive to different devices. And at this point, what we have completed is this ugly looking layout, but it took us a while to do that, and we went through a lot of really crucial concepts with the CSS Grid system. The next thing that I'm going to do, and what I always do, is kind of go component by component, feature by feature, and get the HTML content that I need in there and get it aligned in the correct way. After doing that, then I'll go in and add colors and font styles and all that kind of good stuff. I think a good place to start is going to be our header. So the top bar up here, we're going to start with that, and let me collapse this down so we can see it side by side with our code. If we're looking at our HTML, this is what we're creating, the header right now. So let's use these Visual Studio Code foldable accordions to get rid of the grid, the inner grid, so we don't have to look at that, and then we'll expand out the header. Currently we just have a icon in it, and it's not showing because we're not on a mobile device, but once we hit that mobile device, there's the icon. So we'll just work on it from this view to start. So here is our final one, and let me shrink this so we can see it in the mobile view. We have 4 total elements up in this header. So we got the icon, kind of a mock logo. I just put some text in there. And then we have these little groups where we have an icon on top and a link on the bottom. Looking at this from a high level, what I see is 2 groups of items. So we've got a left side of the header and a right side of the header. And those have space between them. So there's kind of just space pushing those to the edges. And if you know how to use Flexbox, which you should if you've watched the prior videos in this series, you know that there's a property called justify content, which has a space between value that we can do exactly that with. So in light of that, let me create those containers. So we'll come within the header, and I want to give a class to left header. So that'll be one div. And then we'll come right below that and say that we want a right header. So there's our left portion and right portion. This icon is going to go into the left header, so we'll cut that and put it up here. Then we have the logo, which is just an H2 element. We'll type that out as logo. Also should give that a class of logo so that we can style it later. And then the right side of the header has got those little groups. So if you want to stack an icon on top of text and align those, you're probably going to need a little flex container. So what we're going to call this is a header link. So we'll give it a div with the class of header link, and then within that div, we're going to give it some sort of icon and then some sort of link. So we'll put an A tag in there, just give it an empty link for now, and we'll name it video and then article. So let's take this entire group, paste that down, and change this to article. Okay, so we should have all the elements here, and what we're going to do while we're still looking at this is we're going to take, let me collapse this so that you can see it. We'll take the right header and the left header, and we will align those with Flexbox. So we'll turn the header parent into a flex container, and then the left header and the right header, sorry about that, will be the flex items that we'll space out. And then as we drill into this on the right header, we're going to open this up, and then each of these divs, so the header link, both of these are going to be flex containers with a flex direction of columns so that the icon goes on top of the link, and then we can align those along a vertical axis. So let's go back to our design Still looks like nothing because we haven't saved, so we'll hit save on that HTML. And now you'll see the icon, logo, video, and I think the article might be overflowing vertically. So we'll come back to our styles and go find the header styles. I don't think I have a section for that yet, so we'll come down here right before the breakpoints and make a comment that says header styles. And then we want to set the header. As I said, we want to set that to a flex container. So we'll say display flex. And what that's going to do when we hit save is make everything go horizontal. So our left header is that icon and the logo, and then our right header are those two links. And then, like I said, we want to say justify content space between. And when we hit save, those are going to get blown out to the edges. So we'll hit save, and now you see that our left container is at the very far left side and our right containers at the very far right. Now these are obviously not centered within the header. An easy way to fix that is say align items, center. So now we've got those centered. And as you can see, they're hugging the left side and the right side of that container. So we might add some padding. So we can say padding. Padding is going to be, I think we'll say 20 pixels and 0, something like that. And I think I got that wrong. So the first argument is going to be the top and bottom padding. So we want that set to 0, and then we want the left and right padding to be set to 20 pixels. So now that we've done that, we've got this little space over on the left and on the right. So let's work on these individually. So we'll start with the left header. So let's target that with a CSS rule. And to get that logo and the icon to be on the same axis, we need to display flex. So create that as a flex container. Now they're not vertically aligned, so just like we did with the overall header, we're going to align the items to be center. So now those are centered, and as you can see, they're kind of smushed together. So we might just add some margin to the right of the icon or maybe to the left of the logo. If we add the margin to the left of the logo, then when the icon disappears, it's going to kind of look weird. So I think what we should do is put margin to the right of that icon, and then when the icon disappears, the logo will just wrap to the left side where this icon is. So let me show you what I was talking about here. So in this view, we have the icon. As we resize it, the icon's going to go away. So let's set some margin left on the logo, which is kind of the incorrect way to do it. So we'll say logo margin left, and I'll give it something ridiculous, so 80 pixels, so that we can really see what's happening. So once we set that, the logo gets pushed off the icon, but see what happens when we resize and the icon goes away. The icon goes away, but we still have that margin left, so it's pushing it out. So instead of doing that, let's set the margin on the icon itself. So if we open up the left header, we have an icon that we can target with the FA bars class. So we'll do that right here. We'll target FA bars, and we'll set a margin right of 80 pixels and get rid of this logo margin. And I think we might even be able to get rid of that whole class. So let's hit save. And now you can see that the icon right here is pushing the logo out with its margin, but then as we resize, this logo is going to come and sit snugly against the left side of the container, which is exactly what we want. So let's put it back to mobile size and then set this to something more reasonable. We'll try something like 10 pixels. I think that looks pretty good. And then as we resize, it's going to go to the left, which looks pretty good to me. Now let's move on to the right side of the header. So we need to target that class by saying right header. Let's open that up. And within it, we have two header links. We need to obviously make those not stack on top of each other like normal block elements. We need to make them side by side. So that's, once again, a display flex. Turn that into a flex container. Now they're next to each other. And then, of course, we're going to want to add some margin between them because right now they're just smushed together. So why don't we come down to the header link classes, which are each of those containers, and put some styles on that. So we'll say maybe margin left is going to be 10 pixels. Now watch these, they'll spread out when I save. That looks pretty good. You'll notice there's no icons here, and that's because if we go into each of these header link classes, we just set an empty I tag. We didn't give it a class, so it's not going to show us an icon. Let's put a class in here. This will be the same, navigation icon, but just to show what's going on, we'll click save. And now you see that navigation icon sitting next to its link right here. We want those to be sitting on top of each other. So in order to do that, we need to make the header link container a flex container. And then we need to set the flex direction there to a column. So let's hit save. And now you'll see the icon goes on top of the link. Let's go ahead and get the same icon down here in the other one. So you see both of those are working. Now we just need to kind of vertically align those two. The way that we do that, because we've set a flex direction of column, we want to align these items on the cross axis, not the main axis. So all we have to do there is say align items center, and those are going to line up. The last thing we need to do is just change these icons to be the correct ones. So down here at the bottom, I've got my style guide, and it's got all the icons you need. So we need the video icon and the paragraph icon. So I will go ahead and take that link, open up a new tab, and here's the video one. So we'll copy that HTML, and we will replace this icon here. Now we need the paragraph, so I'll get this link. We'll visit that in the browser. Here's our paragraph icon. We'll get the HTML, replace that one. We're done there, so we can come back, and when we hit save, we should have the correct icon sitting up here. Now, as you can see on the final design, these icons are a little bit smaller. So we can set that with a font size property. So if we go to the header link, we can target any I tag within the header link will have a font size of, we'll say 0.8 rem units. So root element, that's going to be the HTML. And speaking of, we should actually go to the top with our shared CSS. We've already set the font family, but we should set the font size to our main HTML of 16 pixels. That's just a very standard font size. And I think it's actually the browser default, so this doesn't really matter, but we'll be explicit about it, and we'll set on the root element, which is this HTML, 16 pixels. So that means when we come down here to our header link font size, we're saying I want to take 80% of 16 pixels, or 0.8 of the root element unit. So when we hit save, those icons are going to get smaller. So that looks nice, and notice the icon over here next to the logo did not get smaller because we're targeting the icon that is a descendant of the header link div or class. All right, it is now time to actually make this look good. Right now we've got everything in the right spot. We don't have the right colors or anything like that. So looking at our style guide, if we expand this out, it will show you that the colors, the header and the footer background color is going to be this one. So if we go back, it's going to be this like dark green. So that'll be the first thing that we set, and we might as well set it down here on the footer as well. So let's come up to, or let's copy this color. So there's our background color. And we'll go up to the top, and we'll put in the shared CSS, header and footer are both getting a background color of that. Let's hit save. And it didn't work. it didn't work because we came to the top of our style sheet, and for the layout purposes, so that we could kind of visualize, if you remember, we came down here and we said the header is going to have a background color of that blue. So we just have to delete that, because if we set something at the top, it's going to get overwritten, cascading style sheets. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the series. So let's hit save. Now we're getting the right colors, but obviously all the text is the wrong color. So, but one more thing while we're up in the shared styles. So in the shared CSS, we also want to set the text color. So for the entire document, we want to make the text color the same as this background color, except for the header and the footer, obviously. So what we can do here, there's a couple ways we could do this, but let's take this text color, which is the same here. We'll copy that, and then in the HTML, let's set the color equal to that. Now when we press save, we're going to have problems, because now we've set the color of every text. The links, it doesn't apply to the links, but same as that background color. Now, we could solve this a couple ways, but an easy way, since this declaration is directly above this one, we can just come override that within the header and footer. So we want the color for the header and footer text to be, I believe, the same as the link text color. So let's copy that, set it here, and click save. And now you'll see that those text colors are working and standing out off the background. Now, of course, our links up here are the wrong color, but we want all of the links throughout the entire document to be this same kind of light green. So we can do that in the shared styles as well. So we can come up at the top, set all the A tags to have that same color, click save, and now we have the correct link colors. There's one more thing up here in the header that is not apparent that we need to do, but we definitely need to do it. And that is what happens when we hover over this icon. You can see nothing happens, but when we click it, it actually does something. So for a user experience perspective, we need to indicate to the user that when you hover over this, you can click on it and it'll do something. So the two things that you can generally put on this from a CSS perspective is a cursor type and an opacity. Let's come down to our header styles, and with the FA bars, that represents this icon, we can set a hover state. So FA-bars, and then give it a pseudo class of hover. Now we want to change the cursor to be a pointer, and we want to set the opacity to be 0.8 or 80% opacity. So let's hit save, and now you can see when we hover over this, our cursor changes and the color gets a little bit lighter. So it kind of indicates to the user, hey, you can click me and something is going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to expand the screen for just a moment and show you what it looks like on a huge desktop. So my screen is, I think, well over 1440 pixels or bigger than that. And you can see that when it's such a big screen, the logo's all the way over here on the left and the links are all the way over on the right. And if you were to look at a lot of layouts, so if you go to Twitter or something, you'll see that on a desktop device, they kind of bring everything to the middle so that, you know, the user doesn't have to look way over here and way over here to see the relevant items. So that will be our final breakpoint. And the way that we're going to solve this is, truthfully, I don't think it's like the greatest way in the world, but I kind of put this on at the end, didn't have a lot of time to perfect it. So as we resize this screen, you'll see that once we get into this larger territory, it starts to look weird up here. So at 1440, we're going to bring everything into the middle. So we need to add some space off the left side of this logo and the right side of this little grouping here. So we can actually use CSS Grid to do this for us. So what I'm thinking we do is basically split the header up into 3 columns, and the middle column we can kind of resize to feel it out and see where we want it. We'll definitely have to come back to this once we get all of this content in here just to see how it all lines up. but we can set the outline here right now. So let's kind of collapse some things so that we see what's going on. And the grid container that we're going to want is header, but we only want it on this largest style. So anything greater than 1440, we'll come into header and say display grid. And you'll notice I'm already greater than 1440. Let me actually switch over to this view so we can resize. So once I hit save, you'll see that on this screen, now we've got these items all jumbled up because that we haven't actually placed them on the grid or defined the grid itself. So the grid that we want is going to be one row. So because it's going to be one row, we don't really need to define the grid template rows property. So we'll just start with columns, and we're going to say one fractional unit. We'll say 1,000 pixels, or I think what I did was 950 on the final design, and then one fractional unit. Let's go ahead and hit save on this, and you can see that things are spaced out a little better. If we go to this other view where we can actually look at the grid, you'll see exactly what's going on. Let me bring these tools down at the bottom so we can see a wider screen. So here's our grids. Right now we're looking at the inner grid. Let's uncheck that and check the header. And you can see this is the grid that we have created. So the middle is 1,000, and then the two edges are the remaining space. So what I'm thinking is that since each of these groupings, so the header left and the header right, since those are going to be kind of at the edges, I'm going to take the header left, and I'm going to push it against the right edge of this left little section here of the grid. So it's going to sit, at the very right edge, and then this other one is going to sit at the very left edge of the very, right side of the grid. The way that we can do that is with the align self properties, or justify self. So we need to first take our left header and our right header and give them a grid area. So we'll call this alias RH for right header, and this will be alias LH for left header. Now we will place these items, so grid template areas, and since we have one row, we just need one quotation here, and we're going to put the left header in the left portion. We're going to put a period in there because we want a blank space in our grid kind of in that middle section, and then and I'm sorry, I just said left header. It needs to be alias LH, then the period, and then alias RH. When we hit save, you'll see that we get alias LH, alias RH, and then the left header and the right header sitting in those. Now the only thing that we have to do is take the content itself and place it within its grid area. And we know from our previous lessons we can do that with the justify self property. So we're going to do end for the left header because we want it to go to the very end of that container. And then justify self on the right header is going to be start, which it already is that, but we'll just define it explicitly. So we'll hit save, and now come back, and you see that the logo is sitting here at the right edge, and these are sitting at the left edge. And at this point, there's just one more thing we have to do. I was waiting until we got the header done to do this, but we've got the logo over here and these items here, but our navbar is still way on the left. We've got all this space here. We want to bring it all to the middle. So what we'll do to get there is in this media query, we'll come to the top and we'll specify for the outer grid, we want a few different definitions for our grid. So for grid template columns, we're going to want the same thing as we had here. So one fractional unit, 950 pixels, one fractional unit. And then we can leave the template rows the same, that's fine. We just need to, so whatever is above this on the other views is what we're going to inherit. And then we're just going to update the template areas. So now we're going to have, let's see, we should have 2 rows. And now we're going to put alias header, alias header, alias header. And then we want alias nav, alias inner grid, and then we'll say that one more time here. So let's hit save. And now you can see that everything is kind of brought in. Now this doesn't really make sense at the moment, but you'll see how this actually will work out once we get the remaining elements into this layout. All right, so let's redock on the right. We can go back to our other layouts. I think we're done pretty much with the header. So let's resize this to our mobile. So our header's done. Now we have to move on to that nav bar, which if we expand it is just empty. So let's go to a size where we can, or let's put this down here, and we'll go to this size where that nav bar is going to show up naturally. Okay, so if we look at our final design here, let's collapse this a bit. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So here is our kind of tablet and above design. So our mobile obviously doesn't show the header until we toggle it, but it's going to be the same thing once we toggle it. So here's what we want to try to create. You can see the background color is none, it's just white. And then we have these three little groups. So very similar to what we did over here with these header items, we want to do here in the nav. So let's come to our HTML. We can go ahead and collapse the header for a second and open up this nav. And since we have those three groups, let's actually open the header back up once more and copy this div that we had created for the header link. So we're just going to copy this as a place to start, and we'll paste that in, and we'll call this a nav link. We need a new section in our CSS, so header styles, come down under that and say nav styles. Then we're going to want to take the styles from that header link, copy those down, and call it nav link because that's what we're calling this new container. We probably don't need the margin left because they're going to be stacked vertically, so we'll delete that. And let's save this CSS and save the index.html. And when we come back, you'll see that we have a start to what we're trying to create here. The first thing I want to do, like, we didn't do this with the header, but I want to remove this background because it's just so ugly. So let's come up to where we did that in the nav, just delete that and hit save. So now we're working with something a little better. And as you'll see in the final, these are going to have slightly different colors. So we want everything to be the main text color, and when you hover over it, it basically gets less opacity. Right now, when we hover over this, we get some unexpected behavior. So we can come down to the bottom here, into our nav link. So anything within the nav link on the hover state, we want to make the cursor a pointer, and we want the opacity to be 0.8. We also want all of the colors here to be that main text color. So if we come up to the top, grab that color that we used for the text and put that in there. Now we refresh and you'll see that it's not targeting the A. Oh, that's because we want to set this on a non-hover. So the color needs to come up here in this style. And then we also need to separately target the links in here. So maybe a better way to do this is just say navlink, comma, navlink links. So right now you'll see that when we hover over it, it kind of gets less opacity and we get the little pointer icon, so that's good. We just need to remove this underline and change this link color to be the same as the icon. To do that, we'll just come down and say any link descendant of this container is going to have a color of 1E4040, which is the main text color. So we'll hit save, And now they're the same color and we're getting the result that we want. We just have to remove that underline. So what we'll do is we'll say text decoration will be none on the A tag. And when we hit save, it updates and it looks very similar to what we're dealing with here. So at this point, we're ready to kind of duplicate this down. So we've got the nav link. We can just copy this 3 times over, hit save. Now we've got 3 of these, and now we just have to edit the icons and the text itself. So we need home, profile, and billing. So we'll update that real quick. So now we've got the right text in there. Now we just need to update the icons themselves. So I'm just gonna, rather than trying to go down in the style guide, you can go there if you want, and it has all the links to these. I'm just gonna type them in because I already know them. So the first one we're gonna need is FAS, FA-home. Then we're going to need FA user circle. And then finally, FAS, FA $sign. Let's hit save. Now you can see all the icons are updating. And then finally, what we have to do is obviously space these out a little bit and push them down from, hugging this header element. A great way we can do this is just putting a margin top on each of the items. So if we just go to navlink and say margin top is maybe 20 pixels, that's going to spread them out. It pushes them off this header and kind of off each other. It's not going to be exactly the same. It's pretty close though. So we could definitely put some more spacing at the top of this, but I'm okay with this for now. Or actually, let's just take care of it. So we'll target the nav container itself, and we don't want to put margin on that because if we put, say, a margin top of 20 pixels there, it's going to, well, you can't see it, but if we give it a background color of blue, you'll see that the nav has actually pushed off of that header. So we definitely don't want that, but if we change this to padding top of 20 pixels, that solves it and it pushes these items down a little bit further and it looks great. So the spacing's a little big here, so we'll change this to 15 pixels. And now we're looking really good here with that nav bar. And as you can see, when we resize this, the nav bar is going to disappear, but we can open it up and then we can click on some of the links here. So really convenient way to do this, and it looks great so far. Now that we have this nav built, I'll open this up and show you on that huge desktop device. Here's what's happening. So the nav items over here are kind of going to the middle. We definitely want to push those to the very far right side of their container so that they sit right here. And then the content, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in order to solve this, I think we're gonna have to just throw a flex container on it. So if we come down to our largest style, which that's the only one it's a problem on, we can take the nav container and turn it into a flex container. But they're not working because we have another style competing with this. So if we search, let's go ahead and Control F this window and search for our nav styles. And you'll see that we have a few here. And right in this media query, we are saying display block important. And what that's doing is, on anything greater than a mobile device, we want to display the nav, by default. We don't want to have to toggle it. But this style, since we set it to important, is actually overriding this style down here. So since we're going top to bottom, it's okay. We will put an important at the end of this one, and that will override the one above. So that, when we click save, now they're going to be flex containers. And then we just have to say flex direction will be column. Now they're sitting on top of each other. And now we can just push all the content to the right. So we'll say align items flex end. And now they're going up against that right edge. Now we, of course, need to kind of push those off a little bit. So we can set the nav link classes to have a margin left of maybe 15 pixels. So what we can do is set some padding to the right of maybe 15 pixels, and those will jump off and kind of have some spacing there. So now we're looking a little bit better. Those nav items are not way on the left on this large layout, and then of course what we just did does not affect anything smaller at all. So we're good there. All right, we are ready to make this main content here. So we've got the main article, then we have the sidebar, which wraps down on this smaller screen, and then of course the footer itself. So what I'm going to do is actually leave you, so when you download this repository, these two files that I'm creating now will come by default. So we'll say article content, or sample article content.html, and then we'll also have sample sidebar content.html. And what I'm going to do is paste into the article content a bunch of HTML that you can use, as well as the sidebar. Now for what you're going to do is you'll come into each of these. So we'll get the sidebar content here, copy this, put it down in this aside element, and save it, and it'll get formatted. And then let's see, what's the other one? Would be the article content. We will copy that and paste it within the article tag. Click save, and now you'll see that we have a bunch of content in here that we have to do something with. The first thing you're going to see as you scroll down is there's a bunch of overlapping text, and that is because at some point in this tutorial, I believe I set a height on the main element. We do not want that. We want it to fit its content, so let's hit save. Now everything's spaced out pretty well. We've got our main section, our sidebar, and our footer down here. What I'm going to do so we can still distinguish between these is keep the sidebar background for now, and then we'll remove this main content background because that's a little bit annoying. So let's remove that. Now it's getting a different color because of our previous one. So let's come up a little bit further. Where did we do this? Okay, so the inner grid, we don't want that. Okay, so now we have white background here, which is great. The first thing I'm going to do is put some padding in here. Now, this is the reason, and let me clean up my HTML so you can really see this. So we've got the header collapsed. We can collapse the nav. Let's go ahead and collapse the entire article, and then we'll collapse the aside. So now you can see the outer structure, and you see how I wrapped the article within the main. So now I can just come down into main, the main style, and I can give it padding. So I want to give it a determinate amount of padding on the top and bottom, and then I want the padding to be a percentage of the screen width as it goes left and right. So let's see, what did I set this to? We'll just play around with it. So the first argument, I believe, is the top and bottom. The second one is going to be the left and right. So let's hit save. And you'll see that it kind of came in a little bit. Now it's tough to see with this nav bar, so let's collapse it to the mobile view. And now you can see there's this little gutter on the left. So if we we comment that out, it all kind of wraps like this, and then when we bring it back, now as we resize, the left and the right padding is going to kind of be responsive to the screen size, and then the padding on top and at the bottom is going to be 20 pixels. You are also going to notice that all of this text is just bunched together. And that's because we need to set some margins on the top and bottom of each of our H2, H3, and paragraph elements. So let's go ahead and do that in our shared styles. We'll come to the top where we have our shared CSS, and let's select H1s, H2s, and H3s. We don't have any H4s in there, so it doesn't really matter. And I think what we want to set this to is a margin top of 10 pixels and a margin bottom of 20 pixels. So let's hit save. Now you can see those are breaking off away from the text. We need to style the paragraph text now, and that's going to be a little bit smaller. So we'll say for paragraph elements, we want just the margin bottom to be 15 pixels. Now you can see those are spaced out pretty well. At the bottom, the sidebar doesn't have any padding, so we also need to set that. We'll just try the same exact styles that we did wherever we did them. It's getting to be a big CSS file now, so we put that on main. So maybe let's take this off of main here and bring it up into the shared styles. So we'll say main and the aside will both have that padding. So now this comes in. This is padded, so we're looking pretty good. There's just one piece of content missing still, and that's the footer. So let's go into the footer. I'm just going to paste in the attribution. Would really appreciate it if you kept that there so other people can discover this tutorial. The text color on this is a little bit wrong, so what we can do is set the paragraph elements of the footer to be white text. So let me grab another section here. Once again, we'll come right above those media queries. And this will be the footer styles, which will be pretty easy. So we'll say footer p tags are going to get a color of white. So now that text goes to white, this stays green, and then of course we need to change the background color on the footer. So for now, let's just set something there. We need to delete the footer's background color of orange. And then let's see what in the style guide we've given the footer background color right here. And actually, we've already set this actually. So now that we deleted that, this one at the top here, so header and footer background color, this should apply. So now that's looking good, and finally we can set the footer. We can set this to be a flex container. Then we can justify content center and align items center. Now the created by ZG Dev is kind of centered, but it's a little bit above there because p tags are getting some margin. So we just want to set this to a margin of 0. And now it is perfectly centered in the footer. And finally, just to get some bounds on everything, in the final version, you'll see this line here separating the navbar and then this line on top of this sidebar. So I want to do the same thing here. So we'll come to the nav styles and we'll set a border right of 1 pixel, solid, and then RGBA, we'll just give it a color of black and an opacity of 0.1 or 10%. So there's that line. Looks good. Then we need the sidebar. So this is only going to be one style, but I might as well keep everything organized. So we'll set the aside to have a border top of that same thing, so what we just set. Now if we remove the background on that, which we can do up here somewhere, so we'll get rid of these two. That's gone, and where's our border top? Oh, of course, because I just gave it a color. I need to give it 1 pixel solid. Kind of running out of steam here, but we're getting close. So there's your border top. And then, of course, this is only going to apply for mobile and tablet devices. But once we break this sidebar right here, and it goes up to the top, we don't really need that border. So what we can say is down in this media query, we want the aside to have a border of none. So now that's not going to have a border when it gets bigger and it breaks to the side. Okay, let's pop this open and see what is left. So obviously we have these images right here. We're going to eventually put them into a mosaic type layout, and we're going to use CSS Grid for that. It'll be pretty fun to do. Looks like we need a divider over here. Then we also need the pictures to be rounded with a little drop shadow on them. Let's first take care of this. We need a border to the left on that sidebar when it is bigger. So I actually misspoke when I said we need a border of none. We do need a border. It just needs to be on a different side of the element. So let's put in our 0.1, and instead of just border, we'll say border left. So now there's that left border. We'll fix the images too. So this will be a shared style. So we'll go to the top and put that somewhere. So images will be, get a border radius of 5 pixels, and then a box shadow. We'll just go with 1 pixel across the board, and then a black color with 20% opacity. So there's that rounded corners and a little bit of a drop shadow. And I actually miswrote this, so let's put in a different box shadow. A little bit different, 2 pixels, 3 pixels. I think that looks a little better. All right, I think the last thing we're doing is this mosaic, and then everything else is pretty much complete here. If we resize this, everything's working kind of as expected. There is one thing happening here, so it looks like the picture is breaking off of the screen. So to fix that, in our global image styles, we need to set a max width of 100% of its container. And now that's not going to break off. It's going to resize as that, outer container resizes. But other than that, let's get these images into a mosaic. All right, we can get rid of the style guide down here. Let's bring the styles.css here and split downward so we have some more room and make this bigger. All right, so I got a slightly new view here. We've got the index.html on the top here, and then styles.css. Now we need to take these 3 images and turn them into something like this. Now don't worry about the images themselves, those are randomized. We just want this layout right here. When you copied in the content for the article, you should have already copied in the container. So what I did here was I created a container that we are calling a class of collage, and then we give each image an individual class that we can target it with. These images are by default going to be 300 by 400, 300 by 500, and then 3 by 400. So the middle one is that taller one, and the 2 on the side are going to be equal. So our first step in solving this is to make ourselves a little section. So right above breakpoints, we will say that we want the collage. We will select the class of its container and set it to display grid. And once we do that, those images are going to sit right on top of each other. Now if we look at this collage, it kind of looks like there's 3 columns, something like that, maybe 1 row. You'll be surprised how we're going to build this. I'm not going to really try to go really deep explaining how I came up with it, other than just a little bit of trial and error. So let me define the grid for us. We'll say grid template rows, and what we're going to do is give it 2 rows of 1 fractional unit each. So 2 equal rows, and then for the columns, we will give it 1 fractional unit, then 40 pixels, another fractional unit, another 40 pixels, and then the remaining space, 1 more fractional unit. I'm also going to give this grid container a height. So we know that the tallest picture is 500. So I think what I'm going to do is just give that a height of, say, 550 pixels. So when we click save, you'll see that, where'd we go? Okay, so we've got those 3, looks like 3 columns now, and the total height is 500. But if we open this up here and look at the grid, you'll see this a little better. So let's select the collage. And if we open up this pane and select the grid itself, here's the grid that we're working with. And I'll put on the lines so that you can really see where these pictures are going. So really what our goal here is to put this little guy, it's going to be much bigger once we give it a grid area. We want the middle tallest picture to take up from columns 2 to columns 5, and then the two side pictures will go from columns 1 to column 3. So it's kind of going to overlap that middle picture, and then likewise on the right side we want it to go from column 4 to column 6. Let's go back to our code here and start giving each of them a grid area. So we have collage 1, 2, and 3. Give that a grid area of, we'll say alias C1. And then we will just replace these with their appropriate numbers. Then we can come up, let me get this height at the top, get it out of our way, and say grid template areas. And we may actually not need 2 rows here. I think we only need 1 row. We may come back to that. But for our areas, since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in order to do this with these lines, we're not going to use the grid template areas method. We're just going to come in and say grid column start. Yep, I think that's it. And we'll say 1 for the first one, and grid column end will be 3. So like I said, this first image is going to go from column 1 to 3. Then we're going to take the middle image from 2 to 5. So we'll drop that in there. So there's our middle image going from 2 to 5. And then finally this one will go from 4 to 6. All right, let's hit save on that. These are obviously stacking on top of each other now, and we don't want that. So by default, since they're kind of overlapping, they're going to stack, but we can override this behavior. All we have to do is select everything, so collage 1, 2, and 3. So we could list these out, collage-1, collage-2, blah, blah, blah. Or we could just say, let's take the parent container and select all the descendants. And then we'll say grid row start will be 1, and grid row end will be 2, since we have just 1 row. We'll hit save there, and now they are jumping up on the right spot. Let's get rid of the line numbers and the area names. What you'll notice here is that our overlap is not working correctly. So these two are correct, but this third one should be underneath that middle one. All we have to do for that is set the z index. So the z index for 1 and 3 is going to be 1. This is just arbitrary. You could set it to whatever you want, as long as the z index of 2 is greater than that of 1 and 3. So now the middle one's sitting on top of those two on the left and right. You can see they're all hugging the top side of this container. We want to center them so they're all kind of on that same horizontal axis. To do that, if we go to our CSS and go to the main container, we can say, what do we want to do? We want to say align items center. And now they're sitting on top of each other just like that. Okay, at this point we can kind of shrink this down. Don't need that anymore. At this point it's getting hard to tell which one's the final and which one is the one that we just did, which is a good thing. But this is what we're working on right now. And the last thing we need to do is get those two on the left and right to kind of tilt themselves outward. And this is actually easier than you might think. All you do is come down to the first item and you say transform, and you can pass many different functions to this, but one of them is rotate. And we can say, I think what I did here was 3 degrees, so -3 degrees, so we'll rotate it that way, counterclockwise. Then we'll take this same property and we'll put it on collage number 3, and we'll do a +3 degrees. So when we click save, you'll see these kind of go outward. And there we go. And the last thing we'll do is put a bigger drop shadow on this middle one. So you'll see that this middle one has a more pronounced drop shadow that kind of pushes it off the background a little bit. I'll go ahead and just copy that in. So we'll come to collage number 2 and paste in a box shadow that's got a little bit bigger and less transparent colors. So there it is. Since we didn't see that, let me comment it out. So there's before, and there is after. So it's kind of jumping out from the screen. And as we resize it, everything looks pretty good. We can toggle the nav back and forth, scroll down to the footer. If we toggle the nav there and scroll down to the footer, it gets pushed over. That's good. Then as we make it larger, everything looks great. So congratulations for making it through this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed building this project, and this is gonna help you walk away with some really valuable skills, especially with the CSS grid layouts. And you will be making this again in your career. This is a very common layout, so that's why I picked it, and hopefully you enjoyed it. The last step is to get this deployed to GitHub Pages, which will be relatively simple. We just open up Visual Studio Code. We'll get all these files closed out. So our files are ready, and all we need to do is come to the source control and click this little, or actually we need to stage all of our changes first. So we have to click this plus button. So here's all of our staged changes. Then we have to click the check, and we'll say finish project, hit enter, and I believe that committed it and pushed it up to our repository, if I'm remembering correctly. Actually, I misspoke here. So what we just did, and I apologize, I usually don't use Visual Studio Code. I usually come down into the terminal and just write things like git add all. That's what we just did when we staged it. Then git commit, add a message, so finish project, and then we'd hit enter, and then finally we would say git push origin master, and that's going to push it up to the master branch of our remote GitHub repository. Once again, I have another video on that, and we're going to cover it later in the series, so don't worry about that right now. But the last thing we need to do, since we staged the changes with the plus, we committed them with that check mark. Now we just have to hit these 3 dots and click push or pull, and we need to push to, click origin, and I think that's going to push it up to our repository. Now if we go check that out and refresh, you'll see that there was a push 2 minutes ago. Well, I don't know why it's 2 minutes ago, but all of our files are here, and now the last thing we need to do is get it over to GitHub Pages. So you just click master, and then you'll just type in GitHub Pages, and since I already have it as GitHub Pages, I have to do a little bit different process, but you'll just type gh-pages and then click create branch, and it will create the GitHub Pages branch from all of this code. And then you can come down into the environments, click GitHub Pages, and view the deployment, and that will bring you to the link that you need to view your project. And there you have it. You have a completed project with a nice link to share it with. Would really appreciate it if you tagged me on Twitter if you're sharing it there at zg_dev. It's a great way to connect with me. And if you've enjoyed this series, be sure to give this video a like, maybe leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for getting updates on the remainder videos in this series. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.